There's this researcher from Harvard, if I'm correct, called Neom Wasserman, who wrote an interesting paper called The Paradox of Entrepreneurial Success.
What
where
is this paradox?
He mentioned that conversely to popular logic or thought or basic logic, the more successful you get as an entrepreneur, VC funded or board backed entrepreneur, the more probable it is for you to be fired.
That sounds very backwards.
It completely is. And I personally also feel that it's very, very, very US centric data. But it essentially states that once your company has gone from, let's say, that 0 to 10 stage, and now you need to go from that 10 to 100, your chances of being fired are extremely high because at the earliest stage, when a company is basically a founder and an idea, or a couple of founders and an idea, your VC is backing the founder themselves. Your VC is backing people who are literally just trying to take an idea and make it into reality. At that point of time, you can't really fire the founder because there's nothing that exists. It's only that idea and founding team. As this team grows, and this is something that I've seen a lot in the US, and we've actually talked about it literally a few days back with some friends, is that the kind of traits that make you a great early stage entrepreneur, the kind of drive, the kind of insanity that makes you a great early stage entrepreneur, often doesn't translate into the kind of leader who can take a company from that 10 to 100 journey to mature it to, let's say, an IPO-able company and then lead it on afterward.
Absolutely. In fact, Avik, I think somebody we both know, Pankaj Gupta, who has sold those two companies for 70, 80 mil and now on round three. I think one of the things he always tells me is that I'm a 0 to 1 person. He says, I love taking an idea, running with it and building it from scratch. And he says that 10 to IPO stage just scares me because those daily stand-up, stand-down meetings is just not in my DNA, right? So it's one thing when a founder voluntarily resigns, or when a founder is self-aware enough to be like, listen, this is how far I want to take a business. This is when I want to exit, because this is where I believe my main skill set lies. And it's a whole different thing when they are fired, right? So I want to talk about some examples or some case studies of some very famous founder exits that have happened over the years. And why don't we start with probably the most famous of them all, with Steve Jobs?
Yeah, fair enough. I almost forgot that you mentioned it, that Steve Jobs was fired from Apple. And it kind of happened at a point of time where Apple was going through a very hard time. The Macintosh was badly delayed. Jobs was, at that point of time, a very, very, very hard person to work with. It was his way or the highway. It was his ego over everybody else. And teams just weren't being able to work with him. The Macintosh was badly delayed, came in over budget, and the sales didn't perform anywhere close to the expectations. At which point the board took the call. By the way, they didn't fire him yet. They didn't fire him in general. They took him away from them. They basically removed the Macintosh department from his purview, which was obviously pretty much the largest piece of Apple. So, and Jobs just said, okay, you know what? If that's the case, I quit.
Yeah.
But it was a firing in a way.